Hello and welcome to another episode of Football Frenemies. We have got a banger of a podcast. There's so much happening. Tonight, the Big Ten just announced the 2024-2025 schedules with protected rivalries, so we're going to react to that. We're also going to play a little game of Would You Rather with the Ohio State and Michigan football seasons, and we're going to do a preview of the Big 12 Conference. So here with me, as always, is Cody Thomas. Cody, how's it over in Buckeye Land?
Well, I mean, we're basically all dying thanks to the wildfires in Canada that have
Is it
come
like
all the way down
really,
here.
really smoky down there?
It honestly, Tuesday was probably the worst day. Like Tuesday, it was so smoky that like even though it was still light outside, you couldn't actually like see the sun. Like at like 7 o'clock, you couldn't look up in the sky and be like, "That's where the sun is." It was so smoky and everything was covered it. But it's gotten a little better over the last couple days. But ironically, too, with it, like we had a huge temperature drop. It was like 65 degrees today. I don't know if that was the same for you guys, but it was really, really cold after it was pretty hot the last week. So it's really weird because like Tuesday night, I was like, I don't get what's happening. Like, where'd the sky go? Because everyone's like, okay, there's blue sky, there's no blue sky, but there's no clouds. But
Right.
It's 7 o'clock and we can't see the sun. Like I was looking around, like we were at open fields for my soccer program, and we're like, is this the end of the world? Like, is this gray smoke going to turn away and the blood is the moon is blood red? And I'm like, did I miss the rapture? Like I kind of had a little bit of an existential crisis. Like I've seen Left Behind, I've read Left Behind. That will not happen to me. There is no way. I went home and I was on my knees bedside praying, reciting the Lord's Prayer and the Apostles' Creed and whatever I might need to do.
Well, it was not quite that bad up in Michigan. I wasn't, guessing end times. Although I did see some photos from like downtown New York that the sky was like blood orange, and that was kind of freaky. But over here, it was more just like it kind of looked like foggy, a little hazy. I remember I was walking my daughter in the stroller going by the lake by our house, and I was looking over the water, and I was like, man, it's like 2 PM. It shouldn't still be foggy. And I thought, oh man, my vision, I am getting older. The eyes, they're going. I can't see across the lake. Why is it so cloudy over there? And then I don't know if I want to say I was relieved, but then I kind of learned about what was going on and how it was affecting us. But the vision is still 2020, so thankful for that.
There you go.
Hopefully the air quality does improve and all those wildfires are taken care of. But the one thing that is on fire is the Big Ten. And we are going to talk about the new schedule, the protected rivalries. I was kind of shocked. Yesterday it comes out, hey, this is happening. There was like barely any lead up to it, and then they just dropped it on us today. So before I kind of send off maybe some of my hot takes, what are you thinking about all this? What are some reactions, not just from a Big Ten perspective, but maybe an Ohio State perspective as well?
Yeah, so I'm very 50-50 on it. Like, I very much recognize that I think there is a necessity to it, but at the same time, I also don't think it's the only option. I've got a whole, 3 pros and cons that we're going to look at it, that I want to be able to break down. But there are definitely some things about it that I'm like, okay, this is good, because with the way that college football is moving and with the way that the playoff picture is moving, like it is very important for your conference to appear strong. Like that's very important, especially now that there are more playoff spots than 4. And if you're not a conference champion, it's very important that your conference is strong and that it is set up in the best way possible to show its strength. And so, while I do think this will highlight the best strengths, I think there's a lot of things we have to give up that I'm very much struggling with and that I'm not looking forward to changes that it could come. But, I mean, college football is different, Let's be real. Conference titles don't mean as much anymore. Like, if you're a lower mid-tier program, I think it's huge. But be honest with me, just after Michigan winning the Big Ten the last 2 years, doesn't it kind of just feel like now that you've been able to win a Big Ten championship games back to back for you? Does it not just feel like now it's playoff and national title or bust, and like sometimes the conference championship game is just a necessity to get there?
I'm not there yet. Obviously, it feels like unfinished business when we lose to TCU in the semifinal, but to be able to have that trophy that says you're the best in your conference still is meaningful to me. I think it probably always will be, especially with the playoffs coming up, the expanded playoff where you're going to get the bye because of that conference championship. So I think it'll be important. The only way that I think of it maybe losing a little bit of significance is if Michigan and Ohio State end up having to play each other the very next week after the game. I'm not a fan of that at all. I think it does dull the significance of the game. But in general, I think winning your conference is one of those things that, and maybe not for, like, Ohio State has a different perspective than probably every other team except for maybe 3 other teams, I think, in the country, where for 99, probably like 0.5 or 6% of every other team, winning your conference is pretty much like the best thing you can achieve. So I'm not quite there yet, but yeah, from Ohio State perspective, it's probably not nearly as important. But I can see why you'd say that, after the past 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, with OSU, Ohio State has made the playoff twice with not winning the Big Ten, and we had a streak where was it 4? I think it was 4 straight Big Ten victories for Ohio State. It was 2017 through 2020. And so, like I said, so maybe that's part of it. But like I said, Michigan I think you guys are getting right to that point where it's like you guys are about to be in that same echelon because, Michigan is on track to three-peat. But for me, like your point right there, I think the point you were saying is very true in a 4-team playoff. But I think the moment that we're switching to a 12-team playoff, it's very different because like you said, it gets a bye. But most teams nowadays with 12 teams are just like, hey, let's get to the playoff. Like Penn State is now at a point where they're like, eyes are huge. Like, listen, all Penn State has to do every year is just look good against Michigan and Ohio State. They don't even have to win. They just have to look good, go 10-2. They are a shoo-in for the playoff every year. And they're thinking, okay, we got ourselves there. Let's try and win a national title. And at that point, what's the point in winning the Big Ten championship? Like when you've got a clear path like that to the national title game. So if you want me to, I can go ahead and kind of start.
I can think of 2 teams that can basically illustrate your point. Where was it 2021, I believe, when Alabama upset Georgia in the SEC championship game. They both did make the playoff, and then Georgia was able to get revenge and beat Alabama in the championship game. So that kind of goes along with your point that maybe the conference championship isn't as valuable, but I think that's Alabama and Georgia, teams that their only barometer for success is national championships. And yeah. I think Ohio State claims that. They haven't won since 2014. I think that they've had the teams to do it, so I understand why they would want that type. But I think those are like the 3 teams that every year that's the expectation. I think for a little bit there, you throw in Clemson. You go back a little farther, Florida State. And I think Michigan is hopefully going to get into that stratosphere. But right now, for the majority of all of college football, that's a very meaningful trophy to raise when you can claim to be the best in your conference.
It could be, but I mean, I'm looking at a program like LSU right now where, sure, they did make the SEC championship last year they did that, but, the SEC is a gauntlet. And the idea of, if you're looking at SEC teams where, okay, I can make the playoff without having to have played another game where there could be injuries or wear and tear, because, now the playoff is starting earlier. It has to. It's like starting 2 weeks earlier. So if I'm LSU, I'm like, all I got to do is, finish second in the SEC in our division behind Bama, and we're guaranteed. And at best, they would not see another SEC team until the semifinal, maybe not even the final. And so it's like, okay, all I got to do is go 10-2 or 11-1. I don't win my division. Okay, great. I'm going to get Big 10, Big 12 ACC teams on my walking path to the semifinals or the finals. Like I said, I think I'm looking at teams like LSU, who have won, but LSU is not perennially, winning national championships. They're about, a once every 10-year program, right? That they're playing for national title games and winning national titles. And so, like I said, for me, like there's so many teams like that. Like Penn State is the Big Ten's team there. Like I think Oklahoma very much fits in that because Oklahoma's like 0-5 in the playoff or something like that. Oklahoma is that team where they've got that name value where I think USC is another team that benefits so much more from that. Like as long as USC is 10-2, they're a shoe in every single year. Even if they don't play in a Pac-12 title game. So. My first pro that I have is that I do believe this will get the best Big Ten title game each year. Like, I do think that's a pro. It
should, yeah.
We're not going to get Michigan, Purdue. That's not happening. We will get the best Big Ten title game every year, which in terms of our conference, I think that's important. I am excited about the Big Ten because, like I said, look at last year. Look at the two teams that the two conferences that had that. I don't remember if the ACC had it, but I think the ACC is switching this year to no divisions.
Yep.
And so the Pac-12 or USC, Utah, they're two highest ranked teams in the Pac-12. USC had one loss, Utah had two losses playing in there. Big 12 was a little bit that, but Kansas State was a team that came on with, is it Will Thompson? Is that the quarterback? What's his last name?
It's not Thompson.
It's not Thompson. Oh my gosh, I don't know why. First name is Will, but it'll come back at the weirdest time. It'll come back at the weirdest time, but with that, Kansas State TCU was another exciting conference title game, and it was the best one. But Clemson kind of handled the ACC easily. Georgia cruised over LSU, Michigan cruised over Purdue. So with that, we were gonna get the best title game. Especially, with the addition of USC and UCLA, it's going to make it bigger. But first con I have is 100%. Not only does it completely devalue the the game, but I think it kind of devalues all rivalry games because, like I said, Ohio State now only has one protected rivalry, and it's Michigan. And if you polled 100 OSU fans and you said, who's your second rival, I'd guarantee you that at least 90 of them say Penn State. But now we're not guaranteed to play Penn State every year.
So the Ohio State-Penn State game has been one of the best games of the year pretty much every year for, going back to almost 2016 or so.
Yeah, 2016 through I think it was 2019. It was one-score games in the fourth quarter.
Right. And even last year was at the end, I think Ohio State ended up covering, but until the deep in the fourth quarter, Penn State looked like they were going to win. And
they were winning.
Ohio
and
State
they had outgained Ohio State in yards too.
Just kind of turned it on at the end. But another fantastic game. So I kind of think that was intentional on both sides, and I'm surprised because it's for viewers. That's a huge hit for the TV networks. But if you're Ohio State, do you want to have a season where you're playing Michigan, Penn State, USC, and then with your non-conference, I think Ohio State does have some pretty big non-conference opponents coming up in the future. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably what they're going for. That's one of my biggest matchups that jumped out. I would have loved to have seen Penn State and Ohio State be protected rivals. I think the conference is trying to get, like you said, Penn State and Ohio State both into the playoff. Let's not face off too much because you could be 8-4 instead of 10-2.
Yeah. And so, like I said, your thing right there, you said it right there. It's about getting more teams into the playoff. That's what college football is about. So, even though we might get the best title game, that's what this is about. It's about getting the most teams in the playoff. But the other thing why I think it devalues the rivalry games because, let's just say other rivalry games could determine. Let's say Wisconsin and Minnesota both didn't have Michigan or Ohio State in a year or something like that. It could happen. They had great years. They're going into their last game 10-1 because in 2019 Minnesota was 10-1 and Wisconsin was 9-2 or something like that. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden, if there's the potential that even a non-Ohio State Michigan, God forbid, matchup could happen again, no one wants it repeated. So all of a sudden, these protected rivalries, Like, Brandon, we have to get ready that Michigan-Ohio State is not the last regular season game. I think we have to get ready for that. I think you have to be ready for the idea that Michigan and Ohio State are going to play the last Saturday in October.
Just because you're trying to avoid a rematch.
The back-to-back. Yeah. Like, to me, like I said, like, you don't, because if we play back-to-back and we're already guaranteed to be in, it literally doesn't matter. And here's the worst part about that. All of a sudden, now the rivalry game that doesn't matter is the one in the Horseshoe or the one in the Big House. And now the one that does matter is in Lucas Oil Stadium instead. And that's something that's just not sitting well with me. Like, I'm just like, that's killing me on the idea that, like, Ohio State could be in Ann Arbor and no one cares. Michigan, Harbaugh, and Ryan Day send letters. Hey, you want to play the backups this week so we can play the starters next week? Like I'm not even kidding you. Look what the NFL does. When you've locked up a division and your place is secured, you save your players. We literally could see the last week, if Michigan and Ohio State are both 11-0, ranked 1 and 2 in the country, game of the century, we might see second-string quarterbacks playing.
Well, then wouldn't that be some of reason to move it to like the last Saturday in October?
That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying we have to get comfortable with the idea that it's going to be the last Saturday in October because it's going to carry more weight there. But I'm very much a traditionalist that I cannot stand the idea of the game not being Thanksgiving weekend. I legit am very upset about that.
It does hurt, but I don't think that it has always been the last Saturday. I know it has been for a long time, but I think you're probably right. That's probably the best case scenario with working with what has been the new structure. But honestly, with the increase in opponents, I mean, you have USC, who's definitely going to be a contender. Penn State's on the rise, and you just don't know. Wisconsin, Iowa, all these teams. There's a good chance that this might not be an issue as much as we think if maybe that game happens to be, maybe it's an elimination for one team versus not that they're both 1 and 2 every single year. If the odds of that is the case, then yeah, they could probably make that adjustment. But I don't know that we need to just assume it's going to happen in a 16-team league, especially if we expand further, which I think is the goal, to encompass like Notre Dame or Oregon, who is a national recruiting power. I mean, the more talent you acquire into the league, the less of an opportunity you're going to have for Ohio State and Michigan to just be 1 and 2 every year.
If we got 4 more teams, who do you think it is?
Notre Dame, Oregon, Washington, and then the last one, I would say maybe Stanford. Or
that's my 4.
I actually could see them going for this is going to be a shocker. Miami currently achieved the AAU status, which basically earmarks them as an elite academic university. So if the Big Ten was able to reach into the South, you would have your Big Ten tentacles on the East Coast, the West Coast, the North, and the South, basically encompassing most of the country at that point. So I could see why they'd want to get into Florida as well.
Yeah, I think we would take Miami if we didn't get Notre Dame. I think that's the way we see it because the Big Ten wants Notre Dame so badly. I think Washington and Oregon are kind of a package deal. And I think in terms of just academic standards, like the Big Ten is drooling to get Stanford into it because they so badly. I guarantee you, when the moment Stanford comes in, you know who their protected rivalry is going to be? Northwestern. It's going to be the highest IQ game of the year, or something like that. So
I kind of love that.
Yeah. So another pro I had was I do think it's good. They are now they've got it set on a path where you're going to play each opponent home and home every 4 years. So you will play each team at home. I do think that's great because there's some teams that you hardly ever play, on the other side with the division routes and if the divisions were 8 teams, there would be some teams it would take 4 years to play them once. And so now because there's this, you get to play everyone 4 years. But to me, if we did do divisions, I would say move the conference to 10 games. And so, but
10 games. Where's the spot for the FCS school?
Yeah. But I can't remember what article. Here's another con though. Based on how schedules could shake out, here's a big thing though. Because our goal is to get the best title game. But here's the thing: you could have 3 undefeated teams in the Big Ten at the end of the regular season. And now one team would get left out of the conference title game. Whereas if you still had divisions, it's guaranteed only one team can come out of a division undefeated because you have to play every team in the division.
With the way these matchups are going to come out, it's impossible to have 3 9-0s, but it is possible to have multiple 8-1s.
Are you sure? Because I read an article that said there could be 3 9-0s.
Well, the one I read said the opposite, which was basically one of the pros, because that would be very tough if you had an undefeated team that can't make. I mean, like
it's low odds because obviously it'd have to be certain schedules at the right time. But I had read something that said it could happen. But yeah, like so, what happens now when we have like 4 8-1 teams though, or something like that?
That's where you have to figure out how the tiebreakers work. But if it's true that you basically can't have a 9-0 based on how these teams all crisscross with each other every other year, then I think that is a pretty good positive. And you mentioned not having to wait so long to play each other. There are SEC schools that haven't played each other for years. Like I can't think of off the top of my head who the furthest one is, but I know that Georgia hasn't played Texas A&M for like 4 years once. And what is the point of your conference if you don't play the other teams in your conference? It just is nonsensical. So for the Big Ten to tell a player, you're going to be able to play at every single stadium, and you're going to be able to play every opponent every 2 years, I think is kind of the essence of what it should be in a conference. Yeah. Play everybody.
And honestly, that is probably the thing I'm most excited about, is that fact right there. That you do get to play everyone. But like I said, the tiebreakers are so much muddier because, the way it is right now in one division, if you had 2 8-1 teams, tiebreaker goes to the team who won head to head. Like, it's nice and simple, but you might not have head to head to be able to determine, these tiebreakers. So I think it's going to get so much more muddled. But, to be fair, if we had 4 8-1 teams that at minimum were going to be 10-2, they're probably all in the playoff too.
Right. Yeah.
So that's my last pro, is this will get us more teams in the playoff. And I think that's why the Big Ten did it. It will get us the most teams in the playoffs. But if you think about it, with this team, whoever loses the conference title could be in a lot of trouble when it comes to the playoff. Especially if it's a bad loss. Like, you could literally finish second in the regular season and go lose by 25 points and be like, oh, well, they're not in the playoff. They lost by 25 to so-and-so. And then 2 other teams jump them. So I don't think it sets up the title. I think the title game loser could really, really get hurt in this unless the playoff committee decided to come out and say for all conferences to be like, listen, you can only gain something from conference title games. You can't lose it. I think a great example of that is TCU from this past year. They didn't penalize TCU for losing. They didn't make them, they didn't give them any rewards, like they didn't rank them higher or make them better or whatnot. They didn't penalize them. And because USC lost, it kind of gave them their spot. I bet you if USC won, it would have been USC Ohio State. Because they're thinking dollars. They're thinking dollars.
I don't know.
Could you imagine if Michigan USC? So if Michigan USC was your second and third ranked game, who does the playoff want? Georgia Ohio State or Georgia TCU? We saw what happened. And we saw Georgia play both those teams last year.
That's true. It's tough. You'd be penalizing TCU for playing a championship game. You'd be rewarding Ohio State for not playing a championship game. I'm not going to disagree. I think that the views is what they're looking for, and obviously TCU and Georgia is not as exciting as Ohio State, Georgia. I do often think about what would have happened if USC had gotten in, because boy, would that have been a better matchup for the Wolverines. You did mention possibly the Big Ten getting more teams in because of this new arrangement, obviously with the 12-team playoff. Yes, you will get more teams with a 12-team, but you look at how these schedules could shake out. 2024 Michigan, we're looking at playing Texas in the non-conference, and then the Big Ten, you're going to play teams like Michigan State, Maryland, Minnesota, UCLA, USC on the road, Ohio State on the road, Wisconsin. I mean, that's the toughest schedule I think I can ever remember seeing Michigan ever play. In a year, they're probably going to be reloading. You're talking about getting more teams in, and yet probably your premier program, possibly coming off of a three-peat, might completely whiff and end up like 8-4 and miss the playoff.
Yeah. Although I won't lie, sometimes it's really easy to overestimate teams coming in because we want to be optimistic about it. But, I'm very curious how these two Los Angeles teams handle playing these Big Ten defenses week after week. It's one thing to just get one in the non-conference game and figure out the matchups, but then to have to go through that physicality week after week after week. I did hear through a radio show that the rumor mill that they're expecting USC and UCLA to get highlighted games. So they said we should expect in 2024 for the first Big Ten games to see USC Michigan and UCLA Ohio State.
Yep. Were you a little shocked that Ohio State didn't get USC the very first year that we're able to?
I think they took Michigan because they've won the last 2 years. They're the top team. I think that's why. I think if Ohio State wins the last 2 years, it's Ohio State USC. But Michigan is top dog right now. USC is coming top dog from the Pac-12. That's the premier matchup. It is.
Yeah, I mean, I see that. All I've heard before these things were announced was USC Ohio State. Can you imagine USC Ohio State? And then they're going to give them not until 2025. That surprised me a little bit, especially with Ohio State not having Penn State as a protected rival. I was like, oh, okay, well then they'll have them play as soon as possible. So
I think not getting USC, we're guaranteed to still have Penn State on the schedule in 2024.
Probably.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, everyone thought that. I mean, you got to think Michigan took that from Ohio State. They took that matchup, They wanted it. And USC, you don't want USC playing Michigan, Ohio State in the first year, because the odds are playing your Big Ten for the first time, they could likely pick up one loss outside of Michigan, Ohio State. You play them, I don't think they're beating either of them. So all of a sudden USC comes in with 3 losses. That's not the look they want. They want USC getting 10 wins in their first year.
Yeah.
And so I think they're setting up for that. So, but so that went through. That's all my pros and cons I've got on that. You got any other highlighted points that you think is important to highlight in this, or it is what it is, and we know it. We know there's some comforts and traditions that we have to give up. Some that they really irk me, but like I said, I recognize the best title game. I recognize getting to play all the opponents, and I recognize getting more teams in the playoff. I recognize those things.
Yeah, I think that I do like the flex aspect where, Ohio State has one protected rivalry. Yes, I do wish they had 2 with Penn State, but I don't think you need to force Ohio State to play, let's just say, Rutgers every year because it's not a rivalry. Penn State has no protected rivalries because there's no one that they have to play every year. When you have USC, UCLA joining the conference, I like that they are not having to play, let's just say, Nebraska or Michigan State every single year. If you don't have a historical rival, then you just switch every other year. You're gonna play lots of teams. Whereas Michigan, they have to play Michigan State. I like that we're playing Michigan State every year. Obviously, we have to play Ohio State. So to not have okay, Michigan, you have your 3 rivals, and then Ohio State, you have your 3 rivals. We're not forcing things that aren't there. The flex model, I think, makes a lot of sense. I would have changed some rivalries, but that was between the ADs and the presidents.
I would have liked to have seen 3 protected rivalries for each team. I would have liked to have seen there's things to look forward to, because for number 2, I would have picked Penn State, and then I'm really upset at Gene Smith and Ohio State for just disrespecting and devaluing the Illabuck trophy.
Oh my
we should be going for that every single year against Illinois. I want that turtle, and we haven't got to play for that turtle.
Where's
in a
the
long
turtle?
Time. Where are the turtles? Exactly. I'm gonna be saying that all the time now. Just the fact that there's zero respect for the Illabuck trophy, best trophy in the Big Ten. It's literally a giant turtle. Come on,
Yeah, and I think on a similar, front, Michigan, you could go with Minnesota with the little brown jug. A lot of people have a lot of, it's a very historical matchup. Minnesota and Michigan are just worlds apart. And if you go back the last like 25 matchups, I think Michigan's probably won like 24, 23. Like it's a very high percentage. So it's just not. I know that it's got a lot of history behind it, with how it came about, and it's one of the most played games. I am fine with Michigan playing Minnesota every other year. They don't have to play every year, in my opinion. And for like Michigan State and Penn State, they play for the ugliest trophy in college football, the Land Grant Trophy. It's not a real rivalry. Like, they don't hate each other, but it is a trophy game, so I don't need them to play every year. So that's why I'm fine with it, but it
It's not a historic trophy, though. Little Brown Jug and Illibuk are like two of the most historic trophy games, along with like Paul Bunyan's axe between Wisconsin and Minnesota. But we know that one's being protected.
I feel like most of the really bitter rivalries, which I consider a rivalry, have been protected. And the ones that, like a turtle that Ohio State and Illinois are fighting over, fighting being in air quotes, because when's the last time Illinois actually won that trophy? Tell me.
Juice Williams.
How many years ago was that?
2007. Juice Williams in the shoe.
Still haunts him. You can tell. But I am excited generally. I think that it's going to give us a lot of really interesting games. And it just seems with the divisional structure, you have teams that you really don't play that often. Like Michigan hasn't played trying to think of what West team we haven't played that much. We haven't played Nebraska like that much, or like we missed Wisconsin for the past like 2 years. Like you should be playing every team in your conference at least once every other year, and we're going to do that. So I'm pretty pumped about it. If you don't have anything else, let's get into Would You Rather.
I'm excited for this.
So Cody, I don't know, it was on Snapchat, I think. He was like, "Hey, let's do a Would You Rather with Michigan and Ohio State," and I was like, "What the heck are you talking about?"
Do you remember the Snapchat that I sent that started the Would You Rather? Do you remember what it was?
I don't remember what it was.
So here's your hint. It was about community.
Yeah, you send me like a community snap every day. How am I supposed to remember which one?
And it was the one where I sent the Snapchat of the human being, and I said, I said, would you rather lose to Ohio State or change your mascot to the human beings?
Oh yeah, and I said I would do that for free because it's the greatest mascot of all time.
Michigan, the University of Michigan human beings.
So we might have a little bit of a different format here. I kind of went more like monkey's paw type questions where maybe a really good scenario is going to happen, but something also awful is going to happen to Cody. He's got to choose if it's worth it. I think he's got more of a traditional would you rather going on his side, but we'll just see, how badly do we want it for our teams. I remember at one point I told Travis and Cody, the co-hosts on the Jonesing for Sports podcast, that at one point I would trade I think both my pinky fingers for a national title for Michigan. And I think that's when they realized that I'm truly sick. And I don't deny that. But we're going to talk about it today. How about you start? And
well, actually, I have a proposal for you.
Up.
I have a proposal for you and how it starts because I love randomness. So to kind of explain the game a little further, the goal for Brandon and I is to get the other person to pick the one that doesn't give our team a guarantee or doesn't benefit our team or the one that hurts our team. So I'm trying to get Brandon to pick the one that goes against Michigan or doesn't benefit Michigan. And Brandon is trying to put the situation for me where I'm not picking the thing that benefits Ohio State, or he wants me to pick the one that goes against. And so I want you to pick odds or even. I got a 20-sided die right here.
Okay. Let's go odds.
17. You want to go first or second?
I think I will allow you to go first.
Okay. I got a piece of paper just keeping track of seeing if we stump them. Okay.
Now is this to add to our burrito bet total?
Yes. So if
I up
one
or
of us,
two? I don't remember.
Brandon's up 2. Brandon's definitely up 2 burritos right now. So if
what
Brandon
was the second
wins,
one? I don't remember.
Wasn't the second one, or was the first one JJ or Kate?
I think that was the first one, but there was something.
And then
else
I think we just had one standing for the game. I think we just had a standing one for
Okay.
Michigan Ohio State. I think
I think
that's
I'm
just
up 2, but I don't know what.
Yeah, Brandon's up 2 burritos right now. So if Brandon wins this, he could go up 3 burritos, but I could bring it back down to 1. All right. First, would you rather? So, would you rather Michigan plays OSU this fall without J.J. McCarthy, or be the only one in your house to do dishes and laundry for the entirety of the 2023 college football season?
So that's tough. I do most of the dishes already.
Okay. See, so that was the one gamble I was taking. But like, I'm talking 5 months from start to when that last playoff game, whatever it is.
I'm gonna do that one's. I think I'm gonna easily take the dishes and laundry. Laundry is one of my least favorite things because I hate to fold. I don't know what it is about my big meaty paws, but folding is the devil.
Okay.
However,
so even at home, Michigan's got a great defense and lots of talent.
Is an X factor. The coaches need to realize it because whenever they actually utilize him to run the ball is when the whole offense opens up. And no one else on the roster has the ability to run like he does and throw like he does. I gotta have the 3rd straight victory. I'm doing the dishes. Okay. I'm doing the laundry, and I'm doing a smile on my face. Then.
Or no, that's a point. That's not a point for me because I needed you to pick not having McCarthy. Like that's why I needed you to pick. So, do you want to count that as a point for you, or just only a point when we score on the scenario that we have?
We'll just keep that maybe 0-0. Keep it low.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like keep that's 0-0 because you picked that. Because I honestly thought that you were going to say, you could handle going without McCarthy, like to not have to, because I would maybe pick not having our starter for that, because I mean that's a whole season, and even though I live alone, I already do that anyways. But like I said, you've got Corum, you've got Edwards, you've got a plethora of skill players if you just find a good system, and you've got a defense.
I'm not actually giving up a win per se, but okay. I think. Actually, recently there was an article that was ranking Michigan's most important players, and maybe surprisingly, J.J. McCarthy was number 1. I think Michigan's best player is Blake Corum, but most important player is J.J. McCarthy, and I think he's got the ability to win or, in the TCU game, lose against any opponent. So with Ohio State, I want J.J., even though it's not necessarily a death blow. Okay. So I did you a solid here. I have these in my opinion, ascending order of difficulty.
Okay.
So maybe that'll help you if you want to choose, which ones you want to take or not. But different opinions.
I've got an order to mine because I think it just kind of mixes it up. It feels a little different as you go throughout. So I'm good with my order that I've got. So
all right. And not
my last one's a banger, by the way. My last one is a banger.
Not every one of these is just for single seasons, so some of these will encounter 2. So in this case, would you rather Ohio State wins the game, but for the next 2 years, every time you fart, you poop your pants?
See, here's the thing. I have, not for 2 years straight, but I have accidentally pooped my pants before farting, and believe it or not, it was actually on stage while I was doing a play for summer camp in 2026, where I did something and I farted it. I mean, like it was like almost a liquid poop. Like I just everywhere, and like it smelled, and someone was like, "Oh, what's on his leg?" And,
oh no!
So I've already experienced that.
You've lived it
and gone over it, but I mean, 2 years. Like here's what I'm really trying to think of right now is I'm trying to think of how many situations in my life right now where that could happen and you can't come back from it. Like that's what I'm weighing right now. So I did just preach a Sunday morning for the first time, like a Memorial Day weekend. And I am slated to preach again in August when kids go back to school. There's no coming back from that one. Like, especially because we have an interim pastor and a bunch of new people came, like, with him. So all these people would see me for the first time, and I would just, if I farted, I would just poop my pants. However, The other thing I'm thinking in my mind is I could find a way to like really try and control my diet to avoid farting the best I can.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think because the fact that I've experienced it once, so I can handle it again, and I think the fact that I could control my diet, I would take the risk and choose Ohio State.
Look, you just got to strap on those Depends, and honestly,
no, I'm not. I'm risking it, man. There's no way. There's no way I'm walking around in a Depend. I'm still a single man right now. I'm not walking around in a Depend.
All right, well,
I'm just gonna date a diehard Ohio State fan. So that way she's like, "What if I fart on a date and poop my pants?" She's like, "I get it. It's for like November." You know, I can go out there and I can find someone who understands, and it brings us closer together.
I mean, if you think about it, probably like 75% of farts are forced. So if you cut out that, you really only got to deal with a quarter of them.
Exactly. So,
all right, hit me with number 2.
All right, number 2. Would you rather, in the next 10 years, guarantee 2 national titles for Michigan or 1 championship for each Detroit professional team?
Whoa, that is a brain wrinkler. Oh, man.
Here's the why I chose 2 for Michigan. I really thought on this, but I've heard you explicitly say multiple times there are 2 Detroit teams that you really, really care for and 2 that you're just like, you support them, but they're not like huge. So that's why I went 2 with Michigan compared to, you know, it is technically 4 championships for a pro team, but I know Michigan is your top team. Yeah. Is a Red Wings Stanley Cup really good for the expense of a guaranteed Michigan national championship?
Oh.
2 Michigan national titles or 1 championship for each Detroit team.
Well, the thing is, the Lions getting a Super Bowl would be akin to the Cubs winning the World Series because it has never happened. We're not approaching 100 years, but the Super Bowl is not 100 years old. But for the Lions, it would be like the entire state would just be reborn. So that's huge. The Tigers, I haven't experienced a World Series in my... I mean, they've gone to the World Series, but they haven't won it in my lifetime. So that's one I've been just waiting on. Red Wings have won it in my lifetime.
So do the Pistons.
And the Pistons have 2. So those 2, like, I'm kind of good on. Oh, I'm going to take Michigan because that's easily the top of my priorities. I love all of those teams, but Michigan is definitely the one I invest most time and energy in. I mean, I go to the Big House every year. I don't go to Little Caesars Arena or Comerica Park every year or Ford Field. I have not been to a Lions game. So, yeah, definitely got to go with the one I love the most.
Okay.
That's a good one, though.
I won't lie. I'm a little surprised because I thought you were going to talk about the Lions and say it's easier to pick the Lions over Michigan knowing the other Detroit teams would win, too. That's where tough. I thought I was going to get you.
It's very tough because the Tigers, I have been waiting for the Tigers to do it. The Lions, obviously, I've never expected it. So if they did, it would feel like I've been touched by God. But honestly, the big thing with Michigan is no one really believes you are as good as you have said you are until you do it. And especially if you do it twice. Like, okay, you're legit now. Where I think everyone still looks at Michigan as like, you're not actually legit. Like, you haven't won since 97, and even that one doesn't count, which is bogus, by the way. Michigan's the only school that they count half championships. Everyone else it's a full championship. That's garbage, by the way. But, yep, give me Michigan.
Okay. All right, still no points for either of us.
All right.
You're up.
So this one is a little cruel. I apologize. Would you have Kyle McCord win the Heisman Trophy this year, but the only movie you are allowed to watch for the next 3 years is The Last Jedi?
God!
You could think through the possibilities. If McCord is the Heisman Trophy winner, that's a good season for your Buckeyes. You have replaced C.J. Stroud and some. And you can say it could be Kyle McCord or the other guy. Was it Brown?
Yeah. You win, man. I don't even have to think that long of it. There's no way. Okay, I can't say the statement that I was going to because I don't want you to get canceled. But
so basically, what you're saying is you couldn't just not watch movies for 3 years. That would be too much.
I can watch Community.
Have you watched the new Spider-Verse movie?
Great.
Fantastic.
Great. Oh my gosh. So
that's
good.
That's the kind of stuff you'd be giving up. So, unfortunately,
this is so much. I literally thought earlier today that I'll never watch The Last Jedi again in my life. And all of a sudden you tell me it's the only movie I can watch for 3 years. Oh, well, hold on. Okay, so are you saying like if I wanted to watch, like I have to watch a movie, or it's the only movie I could watch?
No, like, okay, so you go to the movies with your friends, and guess what? Next March, Spider-Verse 3, and everyone else gets to watch Spider-Verse, but your eyes, you see The Last Jedi, and you hear The Last Jedi.
Yeah, you know what? I will stick with it. I'll give you the point on that one, because like going to the theaters with my friends is like when big movies come out.
Tough.
I look forward to it so much. I was so, like I said, Spider-Verse was great. I'm thinking of movies like No Way Home was incredible. Top Gun Maverick was another amazing one. Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, you got the point there. So,
maybe I underestimated the difficulty of that one.
If you had said national championship, I think it'd have been different.
Well, I didn't want to just say national championship for like everyone, but I think if he wins the Heisman, you're definitely at least playing.
Dude, I still might have even just left a national title up to odds instead of having to watch The Last Jedi, man. I just can't.
I know that's a sticking point for you. What you got for me next?
All right, man. Would you rather, so this will be an interesting one the way it starts off. Would you rather guarantee Ohio State wins 2 of the next 3 rivalry games from 2024 to 2026? So not counting this year. Would you rather guarantee Ohio State wins 2 of the 3 games from 2024 to 2026, or be a vegetarian for 3 years, but if Michigan wins, you no longer have to be a vegetarian? You're guaranteeing Ohio State wins 2 of the 3 years, and Ohio State could still win the 3rd one. That one's played on the field. Who wins? It's not like Michigan's guaranteed to win one. Like it's Ohio State is guaranteed to, and the 3rd one could still go to Ohio State. But you'd have to be vegetarian the whole time.
I feel like those are both negatives. Either I guarantee I lose 2 out of 3 and I'm a vegetarian, or I'm a vegetarian.
Or you're a vegetarian. So if you just pick Ohio State to win 2 out of 3, then you're not. Then you.
Yeah. Okay. Ohio State can take 2 out of 3. I'm not doing that.
But the gamble is if Michigan gets a win in there, then it negates it.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So basically, there's a 3-year stretch. Ohio State's gonna win 2, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like Michigan could win the first one, and then I would be done. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. No. I need my protein, and okay. I don't have a good enough palate to just eat vegetables all the time. So,
I mean,
you got me there.
You could always get plant-based protein shakes or whatever.
That sounds like something that.
Could you imagine cooking out with your family Memorial Day weekend, just watching Travis and Cody smack some smoked ribs, and you're sitting there eating a pineapple?
This portobello mushroom is fantastic. Yep, you win the point that time. There's no way. That's
we're tied up.
One of my vices in life is the desire to eat grilled and smoked meats, and that doesn't jive with a vegetarian lifestyle. So that's a good one. My next one is a little bit brutal. Guarantee that the Ohio State defense this year is going to be a top 5 unit. But if you have that guarantee, your video game abilities are reset to when you were 5 years old.
I think I'll pick Ohio State because the only games I've been playing that much recently is 1, Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, and
Okay, so
Fortnite.
you
And
could
Fortnite.
you would get smoked in Fortnite, but you could probably still play Roller Coaster Tycoon with your 5-year-old skills.
I could squat up and they could carry me. They might have to keep reviving me every 2 minutes, but I could still get carried by my friends and do it. So I will pick OSU with that defense. Like, give me that defense. You know, video games, I got to relearn. But, you know, that'd be tough because here's the thing, too. Like, here's where it would actually hit me the hardest. Like, I feel like if you grew up playing video games a lot, everyone has their one game that they're like, I'm convinced I could have been pro in that game. For me, it's Super Mario Strikers.
Oh, let's go.
Dude,
that game is awesome.
Dude, and I was freaking good at that game. Like, I didn't lose. Like, everyone in beta, like my apartment senior year with Cody, Rusty, Josiah, and Andrew, they'd all try to beat me. And Cody was always really close, but, like, they couldn't. Like, I don't know that I've ever lost to another person in that game. So that would be really, really difficult to lose because I do still have a GameCube in that game.
And we've got the college football game coming out next year that you'd probably struggle with with your 5-year-old.
I don't know why
reflexes.
I'm playing NCAA 13. All I do is just scream explicitives all the time when I'm playing that game. It's the worst game, man.
Next year you can do it with better graphics and hopefully the ability to tamper with players in the portal.
That actually sounds fun. That actually be really cool.
All right, so I think we're still at 1-1.
Yep, 2 left each. Would you rather guarantee a Michigan win in 2023 or win $5,000 betting on Ohio State to beat Michigan?
Oh, that's easy. Give me Michigan. No. You'd have to double that number before I start to think about it.
So here's the thing. I really considered putting 10,000. However, I was trying to pick a number that was a significant chunk of change that isn't like life-changing money. You know, like I was trying to find. I did really think about 10,000. Now that you say that, I'm really kicking myself that I didn't say 10,000.
That's where I start to I gotta really mull it over.
So when it gets to 5 figures, that's when it is.
Yeah.
Okay, not for point's sake. You got the point because I wrote the question. It is what it is. But now let's up it to 10,000. Where are you at?
That's tough. Yeah, I think based on paying off a car or house, probably got to take the 10,000.
Okay.
That's the number though. Anything below that, it's like, I don't need it.
Yeah. Because like I said, like you could do something with $5,000 that's not life changing. And like I said, it's just 1 year. If I had said like 3 years, I probably I think if every year I would have put a guarantee I was going to add $5,000. I think that's probably what I would have done. But I think at any point you get to like 15, you're like, I don't care what. I got a family to raise. Give me $15,000 like right now.
All right.
Okay.
My next one is actually the one I thought I was going to go with, but I had them out of order. So this is the little bit brutal one. Ohio State wins the national championship this year, guaranteed. But every time you go to sleep for the next year, you swap consciousness with an orc in the Battle of Pelennor Fields, which for those less nerdy aligned listening, the Battle of Pelennor Fields was out in front in the third movie, out in front of the Kingdom of Gondor, the Great White City, and these orcs they're doing pretty good, but then Aragorn and Legolas and a ghost army show up, and you got the Riders of Rohan show up, and they get just trashed. So it's a losing battle for the orcs. Cody, what are you gonna do? You got to live that every night.
You said a year?
Yeah.
Is it just one per night?
Yeah, like it's almost like a game that resets. Like you start at the battle, and then when you either make it through the battle or die is when you wake up the next morning.
How do I feel when I wake up?
Well, probably depends how your battle went. I mean, if you were able to survive.
So you're saying I could physically feel the effects compared to like when I'm in there, I legitimately feel it and maybe even remember it, but then like when I wake up, I don't feel the pain at all. That's what I'm trying to figure out right now.
It's like a intensely realistic dream where something happens and you almost like feel it happen to you, and then when you like come to, you're like, okay, that was a dream. But every night it is as real as you or I.
See, I'm trying to think of the last time I had a dream where like I legit thought I was feeling the pain. Like I very often have had dreams where I die. And and I've had times where I've dreamed where I died and I was at my funeral and I had to like say goodbye to everyone. Like, oh, I'm dead. I'm never going to see you again. Like, and I like had to give them hugs and cry or whatnot. But like, because I can think of like, I've had dreams that I've like car accidents, but I don't ever remember feeling the pain. Now, obviously this scenario kind of puts it a little differently, but I mean, when you watch it, like there is no slow death. Like if they die, they like Aragorn's like dead, head, heart. Like it's quick. I think after a couple weeks I could get used to it.
Yeah, but that night you're not going to get a restful night's sleep. You have to go to war.
Okay, so I'm not waking up rested.
Well, I mean, your body is physically rested, but your mind is a little bit
okay. So
exhausted
I mentally am feeling all of that. This is a tough one, dude. Because like I said, I'm trying to put into all practicality of like actual dreams I've had where like I don't actually have that. But like I do specifically, obviously, I remember these dreams. I remember them like stressing me out. And so the idea of so it's the mental stress that I'm really coming out of every single day for an entire year.
Yep.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I already have a lot of pretty crazy dreams, and I won't lie. I remember my dreams pretty vividly, and a lot of times they're stressed. Like this might sound brutal, but like one time I do remember having a dream where like my older brother was literally just murdered in front of me.
Oh,
and
no.
I woke up feeling really, really tough about that. But eventually you're like, oh, it's okay, it's a dream. And I'm like, that would suck, but I don't know. Like I have dreams pretty often, and I remember them pretty vividly. I think I could get through it based on that. Like I'm trying to be realistic. I'm trying to be realistic in choosing this. And so the fact that I can think of a lot of times of having stuff about me or close ones or loved ones and knowing it's a dream, but having woken up with the mental stress, like, I don't know, I'm already stressed out enough as it is. It's like, might as well have to stress something that's not real life, right? So give me that OSU natty. I'll die 365 times.
That's impressive. That speaks to your fanhood because I think that one would have got me. The
like I said, I'm trying to be as realistic as I can be with it, and the fact that like I do have a lot of recurring dreams like that already. I'll just because eventually I'm just like, all right, let's go to work. Like time to die.
It's almost like The Day After Tomorrow or whatever that Tom Cruise movie is.
Because what I would do is if I had if I do it, what I would eventually do is I would find the death that was just immediate and don't feel it. And so I would just be like, okay, I got to be in this spot at this time so Aragorn chops my head off and it's just over.
You're just going to run underneath one of those Oliphaunts.
No, not that one. But if that's the one that's quick and easy, it's gone, that's what I'll do. I'll keep finding it. Or there's a chance that I could find the route that eventually I get saved. And so I find the escape route and I just keep executing it every single time. Because the battle's the same. Pelennor Fields is Pelennor Fields. So.
All right. What do you got for me?
Number 5. This one I'm very excited for. Would you rather guarantee Michigan wins over Ohio State for the next decade?
Whoa.
Or Disney retcons the sequel trilogy and brings back George Lucas to rewrite and direct episodes 7, 8, and 9?
You're going to make me swear on this podcast.
One is for 10 years. One is for life. But that's 10 years. And that's added on to the 2 you've won. That's 12 straight years. That'd be the longest winning streak in the game, if I'm not mistaken. But those Star Wars movies are gone.
Wait, they're retconning them, like basically decanonizing them, but they still happened.
No, like they're gone. There's no trace of them outside of anyone who has a DVD copy, and it's made non-canon.
Right. But
like they're redoing it, and they're bringing in George Lucas.
I remember going to the theaters on that night and watching it. And that is the issue. It's kind of like Louisville beat Michigan basketball in the 2013 national championship.
Yeah, I remember
and they actually had to give that title back because they had lots of violations with recruiting and just impropriety things. So technically, there is not a champion for the 2013 basketball season. But I watched that game. It happened. And just in the same way, I watched those movies. They happened. And I do wish that they would just say, okay, we're going to start over because those were a swing and a miss. They're not going to do that. But I can't erase. If you had said that they never actually happened, you might have got me. Because it's honestly one of the worst things that still bothers me to this day. But they did happen. They're just restarting. I don't have a guarantee that they're going to be great. Because George Lucas, yes, would do better. But also, I love the prequels. They're also not great movies, mostly.
Watch out about Revenge of the Sith, first of all.
Episode 3 is a very good movie. But 1 and 2, there's so many. And even in 3, I think that there's some things nits you can pick. I'm going to take the 10 straight because that would be kind of like I was hoping Star Wars, when it came back, was going to be that one thing you point to, like, this is it. Michigan winning 10 straight would be it for me. And I don't have a guarantee Star Wars would do that. So it's almost like getting my hopes up, and then what if it just sucks again? It's like, at that point, just kill me. Like, don't put me through it again. Give me 10 straight.
With that now, though, I hope the last day of your life, when you're an old man and living a happy life, is you had to watch Ohio State beat Michigan, and then either your grandchild or even give you a long life great-grandchild says, hey, can we watch my favorite movie? And they're like, oh, yeah, what is it? And they're like, The Last Jedi. And then you don't get another chance to have had something replaced or something better. I hope that happens to you.
Well, first of all, they will never say that because they will not watch it, because they won't know it exists, because I'm a caring grandfather or great-grandfather. And they'll say, can I watch my favorite movie, Dune, or Into the Spider-Verse, or something actually quality? So no, that's going to be a hard pass.
Okay.
All right, last one for you. This one's just cruel. I'm going to guarantee for you that Ohio State's going to win the next 3 national titles.
The next 3?
The next 3. But you will gain the powers of Superman, and whenever you use your powers, the United States enters another war.
Maybe I'm a sick person. But all I've been thinking about is man, I now have the power to free Canada from the socialist hellhole that they live in right now.
What? How does Superman have that power?
Because I'm going to use my power to remove that person in power.
Oh,
and then,
my gosh.
And then
You're
it
not
starts
Superman.
A war,
You're like
and we free Canada.
Black Adam. All right. So I see what you're saying. Yikes. See, I'm thinking to myself, having the ability to fly and literally not being able to use it would be a daily torture. But hey, if you're just looking to start wars, I mean, by all means, take your 3 natties.
I'll do one with Canada. That's it.
So you're going to use your powers one time and then just hang it up?
I mean, hey, if someone wrongs me, they're not only going to get it from me, they're going to get it from the United States as well. So if I'm sitting on TikTok and China takes my information, they're done for.
Here's the thing, is you don't have the ability to choose who they go to war with. So unless you somehow strategize, like, okay, I'm going to take out the Canada guy.
Okay,
And then,
so you're just totally changing it on me. Okay.
no, I didn't think I was telling you got to choose who the war was with. Just that the
I mean,
U.S. will go to war.
if an American kills Trudeau, well, maybe we should cut that out. But
Hypothetically.
all right, let's just say Travis cut that part. So if an American attacked Canada, like you would think the United States would follow that, right? Until
No,
CNN's
I'm
like,
saying
American
that
American
the US
attacks Canada, goes to war with France.
The U.S. would probably just disown you. Yeah. And then you have to choose, do I fight my own country with my powers and start like 100 wars to keep myself from being put in prison? Or just let it happen and then, yeah, we go to war with France.
I mean, I don't like France.
All right, what are you doing?
I'm really stumped. I mean, if I was really all about the brotherhood, I would make my sacrifices of not being able to do what I want to do with my life for the greater good. And that would be sacrificing my abilities for my brethren in the scarlet and gray to go out and achieve their dreams and to help the state of Ohio be happy and to drink up all the tears coming from that state up north. That's a noble sacrifice.
See,
now, if you told me, I'm going to say pick Ohio State. If you had told me the abilities were the Force, though, I would have picked the Force.
Oh, my.
If it was the Force, oh, yeah, you're telling me I could just speak for people and get whatever I want? I'd be in the stadium with Harbaugh. Halfback pass. Halfback pass. Halfback pass. Over and over again. So all of a sudden he's like, they're like, why did your running back have 50 pass attempts? He's like, what are you talking about?
Oh, I think you're stronger than I. To have the powers of a god and yet not be able to do anything with them would be the worst. Unless, like you're looking to start wars. But I think that gets us at a tie. So no burritos have been sent today. That was fun. We'll have to do something like that in the future. If you're listening,
I thought 2 and 5 was where I was going to get my points. I thought I was going to get you on the pro teams and the sequel trilogy.
That was incredibly tough.
I thought I had you on both of those. I thought I was getting 2 points and maybe one more.
I think the toughest one was the pro teams, and that really was a stumper. But yeah, if you're listening, let us know in the Discord or call in. Let us know who you thought had the tougher questions. What questions could you have answered yes or no to? Favorite ones, stuff like that. We are already over an hour, so we are going to speed through. We're going to do a very rapid fire Big 12 look ahead. Before we do, I just listened to our previous podcast. If you were listening to that podcast, you're probably were hearing some things that were a little dated. It had been a while since we had recorded that podcast and when it got posted. I have already changed a prediction I had. So just to maybe go back in time a little bit, when we've done these previews, we've covered the Pac-12. Cody had the opinion that the Pac-12 is the best conference in college football, and he has chosen Oregon to win the Pac-12 and make the playoff, right? I'm not putting words in your mouth. Okay, and then I had said USC to win the Pac-12 and not make it the playoff because of just quality at the top. Probably one of those teams is losing 2 games. We covered the ACC, and in a head-scratcher, we both came to the conclusion that Clemson would win the ACC, and unfortunately, I have to break off our pod unity. I have a new prediction in. Cody, who am I picking for the ACC?
I hate you.
That's right. Cody's least favorite team, who's getting way too much love. I'm officially flipping my prediction to Florida State. They have had some phenomenal transfers come in that I think are going to make a huge difference. And honestly, I'm not ready to say for sure that they are going to make the playoff, but I do think with Florida State and LSU playing each other, is that week 1 that they play each other?
In Orlando.
That game, one of those two teams will make the playoff. That's maybe my hot take. It could be LSU, could be Florida State, ACC champs. So they've got a tougher road, as we talked about in the last podcast, but I'm flipping my prediction. Now, Big 12. Cody, what's your feel on the Big 12? Who's your favorite surprise team? Tell us who you're looking for.
So the more as I was really kind of looking at this, I think we both agree that we think the ACC and the Big 12 are kind of the bottom two of the Power Five. I think the first thing that's going to happen is, honestly, I think they actually could be the worst Power Five conference this year. I think last podcast I did say that about the ACC, but I really looked into it because here's the thing. I think for all the new teams, I think they're all going to finish in the bottom half, maybe even the bottom 4 or 5. Like, I don't have any confidence. Maybe Cincinnati, but, I mean, that Cincinnati team is already far removed from what they were under Luke Fickell.
Right.
And, to do it consistently week in and week out, I have zero confidence in UCF. I think they're going to finish last in the Big 12. And I don't really have much confidence in Houston or BYU either. I think Cincinnati could maybe finish 6th, but honestly, I think so. The fact that all these new teams are going to finish in the bottom half, that's adding no value to the conference. And so, yeah, I don't really believe in either of them. And I think, we were talking about this beforehand. I think the most intriguing storyline going in is OU and Texas's final year in the Big 12. And do you think every single team is going who plays OU and Texas? Do you think they will treat them like their most hated rival of all time? Like, yes, we are ready to send you out in a horrible way. Because the worst thing that could happen for the Big 12 is OU and Texas in the conference championship this year. That's the worst thing that could happen for them.
Yeah, I think that every team's going to give them their best shot. But like you said, I am also down on the quality of these teams. I think that there's a lot of good to pretty good teams, but no teams that are going to be I hesitate to do this because last year TCU kind of came out of nowhere and really had a fantastic season. But I'm not predicting that again for the Big 12.
No, and how many comeback wins did TCU have last year? Like, TCU was the example of just a good team. Not great, not like even high quality, just a good team. Everything went right. Because including everything going right was Michigan just not playing their kind of game at all in the playoffs. So, like, literally everything went right for TCU that could. Like, their loss in the Big 12 championship, too, was another comeback where, like, literally Max Duggan is just running for his life. And, like, he fell in the end zone. And I was like, can he even stand? Like, you saw what it took. It was not an easy time for them to get there. Like, it was that. And like I said, Kansas State, the other team in there, in a conference where there's no divisions, was a 3-loss team.
Yeah. In
there. And so I don't think the quality is that high. And so with that, I think they could be the bottom half, because I think if you took the top 5 teams in the ACC and the top 5 teams in the Big 12, I would favor the ACC. Now maybe the last 2 teams we'll see. Beforehand, I would have said the last 2 teams in the ACC were the worst, but now with UCF and either BYU or Houston, I maybe would, And like I said, you got to think, I don't know if this is a good thing or not. You got to think Kansas is not in the bottom 4 of the Big 12. Is that good or bad?
That's bad.
Kansas isn't in the bottom 4 of the Big 12. So, I don't know where I do think. So we'll just start with this. Who's your favorite to win the Big 12 this year?
I hate myself for picking them, but this is the year that Texas is back. I am looking at an offense that is so stacked. With the wide receivers that Quinn Ewers will be throwing to, I don't think a lot of Big 12 defenses are going to really stand a chance. And I know that it's Texas, and Steve Sarkisian has never gotten through a season and lost less than 4 games. However, with the current landscape of the Big 12, like you, I am placing the Big 12 at the bottom of the pecking order of the conferences. Last pod, I had the ACC in that 4 spot, and I'm putting the Big 12 at the 5 spot. I do think that the middle quality of the Big 12 is better than the ACC, but the top, the cream of the crop for the ACC is a lot better than the Big 12. And I think you're looking at, talent-wise, Oklahoma and Texas having a distinct advantage when it comes to the rest of the Big 12. So I'm going to pick Texas just based on the quality of offense that they should be able to have. And I think the defense is improved. I mean, it's not the old defense we were used to seeing where they're giving up like 40 points and 50 points. That TCU game that they lost was like a Big Ten West game. I mean, it was low scoring. I don't know that they got out above 20 points. So I hate that I'm picking Texas, but it's literally the only team, in my opinion, that I can really get behind because of the talent that they have. And they just have to do it. They have to do it before they leave for the SEC, because if they don't do it this year, are they going to ever be able to do it in the SEC? Is Texas going to be able to get over the hump against Georgia, against Alabama, LSU? If you can't get over the hump against a TCU or a Baylor or a Kansas State, then you are an unserious program. And for the past 5 years they have been, and longer than that they've been unserious. This is the year that Texas is going to get serious again. And all of a sudden people are going to say, hey, Texas coming to the SEC, they could make some noise. So they have to do it to get that momentum. And I don't like Steve Sarkisian, so I'm not really cheering for this to happen, but that's my Big 12 champ, Texas.
Dude, I just don't believe in Texas. Like, I never buy into it. Well,
Neither do I.
That's a lie. I did buy into it in 2016, and I will never let that happen again. Not just with them, but with any team. I refuse to let it happen with Texas A&M. This last year, like, I think I even remember, like, before the season started, we were kind of talking about things. I was like, dude, Texas A&M, no. Like, I kept saying, like, they're so overrated. Look what they did last year. They're 5-7, like, for crying out loud. So I do think Texas will finish 3rd in the Big 12 this year. Kansas State is still my favorite. I think they have the best coach in the Big 12, Chris Kleiman. And I do think, while I'm not boasting or bragging about their roster, I think it is the most well-rounded, complete. Like, their offense is above average, their defense is above average. And in this Big 12 conference, I think that's definitely good enough to win it. Like I said, for me, like, I can admit, like, I do like the talent that Texas has acquired. They've got Xavier Worthy, who was it A.D. Mitchell, the Georgia wide receiver that transferred to Texas as well.
Oh, he's so good. But
I mean, replacing Bijan, man, like part of why Quinn Ewers was as effective against Bama when he was there, because I think Bama said, we're gonna stop Bijan, and we'll let Quinn Ewers get his. I think, and then Quinn Ewers got hurt, and so now I will say, if Quinn Ewers didn't get hurt, there's a decent chance that Texas wins that game. Like, you can never go with guarantees. You can never say it. That's why, for me, like I have not died on the hill that Ohio State beats Georgia if Marvin Harrison Jr. is in there. Like, there's no proof. Like, yes, we know Marvin was doing great, but, Marvin Harrison didn't really have many catches. I don't think he had a catch in the 3rd quarter against Georgia. And after he got his 2nd touchdown, he wasn't catching as many. So, but I mean, to be fair, they started double teaming him, and Ibuka started going crazy. But even with that, I will not die on the hill that Ohio State wins that game if Marvin Harrison doesn't get hurt. There's no proof. And I'm going to go the same thing with Texas. I think it's very interesting that Quinn Ewers is still in there, but Hudson Card still played decent in that game when he was in too. It wasn't like Hudson Card played awful and then Texas lost by 1, And so because of that, I think Texas could be a 9-3 team. maybe even a 10-2 team. But I think they finished third. I think Kansas State goes in, and I do think an intriguing team to watch is Oklahoma because they have the easiest schedule in the Big 12.
Yep.
I saw that posted. They have the easy schedule. And then one of my two sleeper teams, because they have the second easiest schedule, is Oklahoma State. But without Spencer Sanders, which actually, I don't know, has he gone anywhere or is he coming back?
Yeah, he went to Ole Miss.
What the heck? Actually, that's kind of intriguing. Now that I think about that. Interesting.
Yeah, but he's in a quarterback battle, so we'll see what happens there.
He's not in a quarterback battle with Jackson Dart. Lane Kiffin brought in Spencer Sanders, if that's the case, because of what Jackson Dart is. He did not pan out. He was a running threat. That's it. He was not a passing threat. And so Spencer Sanders is not. He's basically just the Big 12 Peyton Thorne. But I would take Peyton Thorne or Spencer Sanders over Jackson Dart. Anyways, Big 12. Yeah, I think Kansas State is still the favorite, but I think Oklahoma has the best odds to win the Big 12 just because of their schedule. I do think they beat Texas. I think OU. I think they beat Texas. I think Oklahoma, just a year or two under Brent Venables. I think he's gonna. Nothing great, but I mean they did get a few new defensive pieces. But I think they got one really nice recruit coming in defensively as well. I think Venables will have a little bit now of his culture instilled, and I think they added Andrew Anthony, so they got a great wide receiver for Dylan Gabriel to throw to. And so, yeah, I think while I would still say Kansas State is the favorite, I think Oklahoma is really intriguing because of that easy schedule. All they really have to do is get over Texas. If they get over Texas, they could. If they beat Texas, I think they could take 2 losses and still get to the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, I think that the Big 12 champion probably does end up having 2 losses. Just the same idea as the Pac-12. I think you've got a lot of teams that are pretty good. Some teams are really good, but I think they're going to beat each other up. I really could see Texas and Oklahoma rematching in the Big 12 championship. We'll see. My surprise team it's almost hard to call them a surprise team. A lot of people are predicting a cataclysmic collapse for TCU. And I think that they are still going to be contending, and that they're probably going to end in that 8-ish win range, which for what I see, people are just basically completely discounting them. Well, they lost Quentin Johnston, their star wide receiver. Oh, they lost Max Duggan. They had all those close games. They also were very well coached. Yes, they lost their offensive coordinator. They're losing a lot. I'm not denying that. I'm also not saying they're going to win the Big 12, but I also think they're not going to just go back to being old TCU that is like a 6 or 7 win team. I think that they get up closer to 8 wins and are able to have a very respectable season and maybe upset one of those upper tier teams. And I think that they're still going to be solid and start to rebuild for their next playoff run.
Okay, interesting. I don't think TCU is going to have this meltdown, but I'd be surprised if they were more than 8-4. I do think Sonny Dykes is going to have a consistent program out there. But I think you're going to find. I think we're going to find that the norm for TCU is 8-4 to 10-2. I think that's going to be their consistent range going forward. And so I think just based off what they lost with Duggan and Quentin Johnston and some of those other pieces, because who's it? DeAndre Miller, was that the main running back? He's gone too. Kendre Miller. So I mean, I think it's I don't think they have enough to get back to it, but they're not going to have a major drop off. But I'm curious what you think of this. My surprise team in the Big 12 is Texas Tech.
That's a hot team. I've been seeing people predicting them to
There's
be
been
right
a lot.
up there
So
at 8 wins. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So their second game of the season, they get Oregon at home. Ooh. So that'll be really interesting. This is what we'll kind of get to see because Texas Tech's quarterback is Tyler Shuck, or however you say it. The kid who transferred from Oregon when Bo Nix came in. And so he's experienced. He had like, you know, their team wasn't that great, but he had a good year. And like, I can't remember the coach's name, but people are really high on the coach that they've got on Texas Tech, and they've got some decent talent around him. And they also have a favorable Big 12 schedule. So here's some things to know about them and their schedule. They avoid Oklahoma and Oklahoma State on their schedule. They get TCU and Kansas State at home. They have Houston, BYU, and UCF on the schedule.
Whoa. Okay.
And then their last regular season game, they do go to Texas on, I believe it's a Friday night.
Wow.
So,
that's a favorable schedule.
Honestly, if that game comes, that game could be deciding who plays in a Big 12 championship. Right. And I think all the pressure's on Texas, not Texas Tech. They can sit there and be like, hey, look what we built. We were just one game away. We were at Texas. We can come back and run it back. While Texas, if they were to lose that game and not make the Big 12 championship, they would, I think, just recruiting would go so south going to the SEC, because everyone's like, they couldn't even do it in the Big 12. Now I'm going to go to Texas and get ransacked in the SEC. Like, so I do think Texas Tech is set up interestingly. They got a rising coach. They've got an experienced quarterback. They've got a favorable schedule with a quality opponent early in the season at home to really test what they can do. So Texas Tech is I'm not trying to jump the gun because I don't believe they would do what TCU did last year, but I think they're kind of poised to, like, it looks like there's already things that are like striking right for them. Like, they look like a program where things are in good order compared to like things that you're dreading. Like I said, with that schedule, you know, avoiding both the Oklahomas, Kansas State, TCU at home, BYU, UCF, Houston, all put on the schedule. And like I said, I think two of those three are away games too. So like they get those easy away games. So I think Texas Tech is, to me, they're actually one of the most intriguing teams to watch in general next year. I am very, very curious because I'm trying to find a way, as we're, you know, doing this podcast, I'm trying to find a way to make sure that we're connected to all across the college football world. And so for me in the Big 12, like Texas Tech is like, I'm super, super intrigued. Just kind of like, you know, I'm really intrigued with all the Pac-12. Like Texas Tech has really got my attention. I'm very curious what they might be able to do.
Yeah, they were intriguing last year. Definitely you can see it's an ascending program. So we'll see if they can do it back-to-back years. Let's close with if you've got any specific players that you think are going to possibly make some noise in the Heisman race. And do you have your Big 12 champion going on to the playoff, or is there a TCU situation where you have the loser going on? So playoff and potential Heisman candidates.
I think there's only two in the Big 12. I think it's Quinn Ewers and Dylan Gabriel. Mm-hmm. There's not really a standout running back anywhere in the Big 12 now with Bijan gone. Like I said, you know, Will Howard's a nice QB, but Kansas State isn't running an offense that's, you know, throwing up these numbers. You know, Kansas State is very methodical in their offense, so they're not producing a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. I don't know who the replacement is for Max Duggan at TCU, but it is possible. Who that number 3 running back? It is possible he is the top running back coming back in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. I could see that, but I think Quinn Ewers and Dylan Gabriel are the only options. And to be honest, I would not even have them in my top 10 list.
Okay. So with my only one is Quinn Ewers. The reasoning behind that is I think he is kind of like a Kyle McCord or Devin Brown at Ohio State, where you don't even have to be like an elite quarterback. The weapons around you are going to make your job so much easier. Texas is also going to have a dominant offensive line. And so for Quinn Ewers to just throw the ball up, A.D. Mitchell comes down with it. Throw the ball far, Xavier Worthy outruns the defense and runs for a 70-yard touchdown. I don't think he has to be C.J. Stroud level or Bryce Young level or, you know, last year's Caleb Williams level. I think if he just plays pretty good and then is a stat patter because of the type of offense they're running with the weapons he has, I think he has got a really good shot at making that ceremony. Last year, Quinn Ewers, who in my opinion was thoroughly mediocre, I thought he had some good moments. He looked pretty good against Alabama. I think you nailed it when you said it's probably because Alabama was literally selling out to stop Bijan Robinson. But there's moments he looked good, and there's moments he looked very much like a first-year starter. And yet, I was seeing some of the major media members singing his praises to the extent that there was one media member saying he is already the best quarterback in college football. And I was so sick when I heard that. And of course, it's, I was being sarcastic. But there is a consistent narrative. If you're the Texas quarterback, if you're Quinn Ewers, who was a 100 rated recruit. So out of 100 recruits are usually, like 90.21. He was a 1.0 and the highest rated recruit that, you can get. Rashawn Gary, I think, was the last 1.0, maybe Trevor Lawrence. But the point is, these college football media members, they get it in their head when you see a recruit that's perfect per se, and he's playing at Texas with perfect weapons around him. The media, which the Heisman's a media award anyways, they're going to take a very good season and turn it into a narrative of an elite season. So as long as Quinn Ewers is just doing his job, plays pretty well, throws for a decent amount of yards and touchdowns, doesn't throw a terrible amount of interceptions, he will get hyped to the moon and probably might find himself in New York at the end of the season.
I just don't buy it. Could it happen? Of course it could happen. But I don't buy it. Like, at Ohio State, by the time the end of the 2021 season came, there was a reason why Kyle McCord was still ahead of Quinn Ewers at the depth chart. Even with Quinn Ewers being this transcendent. I mean, like, he was supposed to be like Trevor Lawrence. And look what Dabo did at Clemson that year. Like, Kelly Bryant was there, and 4 games came in. He was like, hey, Kelly, you should transfer. You should keep this year of eligibility because it's Trevor's time. 4 games in.
But you're not
Trevor's
doing that
time.
to C.J. Stroud.
But I mean, Stroud wasn't Stroud yet, though. He wasn't. Like, he was shaky. He was struggling. He was throwing interceptions. Like, those first 4 games, like, I remember after the Akron game, everyone's calling for Kyle McCord to start going forward in 2021, because we beat Akron. And then he came back, and I can't remember if it was Rutgers or Maryland that year, who it was, but, Stroud came back, and all of a sudden he started stringing those games together. And we're like, okay, maybe he was injured. But, like, people were claiming for Kyle McCord, not for Quinn Ewers. And, like, Quinn Ewers wasn't even getting mentioned. And so, in a game where we literally were playing Akron, we were playing a MAC school, Quinn Ewers didn't even go in the game. Like, it wasn't like Kyle McCord played the first half and Quinn Ewers played the second half when we were up like 40 at halftime. It was just Kyle McCord. And then I think maybe Jack Miller got a little bit of time too, because Jack Miller was still on the roster in 2021. So you got to remember that. Like Jack Miller was going in over Quinn Ewers too. Like, so at that point, so like I said, like could he develop? Yeah, but like, Steve Sarkisian, did a good job as Bama's OC, but like, where as a head coach can Steve Sarkisian plant his flag where it's like, look at that great quarterback. What, are you going to tell me Jake Locker? Like, who are you going to throw out there? So like I said, I have to see it to believe it, but like, I think Quinn Ewers is a good Big 12 quarterback. That's it.
Yeah, and that's my point. If he's a good Big 12 quarterback, he is going to be a great Heisman story. I'm not saying he'd win it, but I think just a pretty good season. Give him like 3,300 yards, upper 20s, low 30s touchdowns, 10 or less interceptions. He's probably getting Heisman buzz at the end of the season, especially if they're going to be in the Big 12 championship.
Dude, I'll even concede that I think Jordan Travis is more likely to get Heisman buzz over Quinn Ewers. Good,
because that's my quarterback for the ACC
I know.
champs.
So,
all right, I don't have
the final question. Do you think a Big 12 team gets to the playoff?
I do not. I am
Same.
going to think most likely they're going to have 2 losses somewhere. Especially if I'm picking Texas, there's a good chance they lose to Bama.
You know my
I know
prediction?
it was close last year, but what?
A 1-loss Big 12 champion not in the playoff.
It's very possible. I think that you're going to have a lot of very high-quality teams. I think there's a good chance you're going to have the SEC, which we haven't covered yet. I think you're probably going to have a 12-0 team facing an 11-1 team. If the 11-1 team wins, they're in, and obviously the 12-0 team is in. You got the Big Ten champ, and then I think probably your ACC champ's going to get in before your Big 12. And Pac-12 could do it too with the USC or Oregon or whoever.
Like I said, you could have Bama, LSU, and Georgia all with 1 loss. You could have Michigan, Ohio State, 1 undefeated, 1 with 1 loss. You could have 2 Pac-12 teams, 1 loss, and even 1 Pac-12 team with 2 losses, and look better, much better than a 1-loss Big 12 champ. And then you've got to throw in Clemson, and if another ACC team gets up there as well. So like I said, like the Big 12 is just that, and I think they're all going to beat each other too. I think Kansas State wins the Big 12 at 10-2.
And
or 11-2, I should say.
For Coach Chris Kleiman, he will get a New Year's Six bowl and then get absolutely trashed by whatever SEC team doesn't make it in. I was really disappointed with that Alabama showing last year. But I think that'll probably do it for us. We're over an hour and a half now. So as always, let us know if there's something you want us to talk about. Because right now, we're just talking about whatever we want. Would you rathers, Big 12 conference, and all good stuff. But next time we'll probably be looking at either the SEC or the Big 10. And of course, it's the off season. Give us any question you want us to talk about. We're welcome to feedback. If you want to hear Cody, think of more would you rathers, we're always game for that. So we thank you for hanging out with us tonight, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks. And